Yes, progressed. Well, good evening, Rose. Good evening,
Good evening.
good afternoon, good afternoon, all of you here. I believe you are there, right? So we start the sex art bottle, and again, Rose Murray Brown and Rose. The floor is yours.
Thank
Please.
you very much. So welcome to the SZEKSZARD bottle seminar, in which we're going to focus on the SZEKSZARD wine region in southern Hungary, a historic red wine region, one of the warmest and sunniest in Hungary, and best known for its elegant, soft-textured and approachable reds. SZEKSZARD is a small, very attractive region with a band of passionate, hard-working winemakers who have been so good at collaborating together. And one of the initiatives that they've introduced is the SZEKSZARD bottle, which they introduced 8 years ago in 2015. And this is a specially embossed bottle. You can see here it's a Burgundian shape because they feel that obviously is similar to the styles of wine. Burgundian shape is an elongated Burgundian bottle, and it's got a coat of arms and the name SZEKSZARD. So it's a specially designed embossed bottle, and it's used for their flagship cuvée and their varietals. So the key varietals are Kadaka and Kek Frankos, and they use it for their traditional regional cuvée Bikava. So that's what we're going to be tasting today. Now, in order to be able to put your wine into this bottle, it has to pass a strict tasting panel who look for the characteristics of the variety and the good acidity, balanced alcohol, and no overpowering oak. So that's very important. So all the wines in our tasting will have been through this strict tasting panel, so basically they're wines that are authentic and good quality. Obviously, other wines are produced in the SZEKSZARD region, the white wines and rosés, and as Bordeaux varieties and Bordeaux blends. But what we're focusing on for this seminar are the Kadaka, the Kek Frankos, and then the Bikava cuvées. So we've got 3 Kadaka wines, we've got 2 Kek Frankos, and then we've got the rest are the Bikavas. So the next slide here will show you how many wineries have been using the bottle. So in 2015, 13 wineries, and by 2020, 20 wineries. So that's about half the wineries in the region. So on the next slide here, you'll see where SZEKSZARD is. So let's have a look. See, we're in the Carpathian Basin here, about an hour and a half's drive south of Budapest, and about an hour and a half's drive from Lake Balaton as well. And you've got on the western side, you've got the Tolna and the Baranya Hills, and then on the eastern side, the Dunamenti Plain. So on the west, you've got the sort of Metsek forests and the hills, and then on the eastern side, you've got the Danube. So we're very close to the Danube here. The region, the SZEKSZARD region's about 20 kilometers, wine region is about 20 kilometers from north to south. And it's like a series of interlocking hills, each with their own microclimate. So on the next slide, we see a lovely picture here of SZEKSZARD, and you can see the size of the region. And one of the winemakers, Zoltan Hyman, is going to talk to us about what we can see in this picture.
Hello, everybody, and greetings from our little group here. We are all together, the winemakers, with you now. So we will switch accordingly to whose wine and whose topic is coming up. So I just wanted to start with this picture because this was taken of our winery. So this picture is facing north now, what you can see. And towards the east, towards the right-hand side of the picture, there is the Transdanubian, the large Pannonian plain that starts here. And also towards the west, the left-hand side of the picture, you can see the Transdanubian hills. So we are basically at the meeting point of these two separate landscapes. And I think if you would like to speak about the terroir of SZEKSZARD, this is the most overarching theme, that climatically we get a lot of heat attracted from the large Hungarian plain. And as we go into the valleys of SZEKSZARD, the more protected it gets and the more cooler. So there's a nice chain of valleys which can be quite different according to the climatic factors.
That's great. Thank you very much indeed. Now on the next slide, we can see a few more details about the region. So there are 45 wine producers, average estate size 20 hectares, so a lot of family businesses, and predominantly red grape varieties grown. So 50 to 55% red wines produced, 30 to 35% rosés. The rosés are very good from this region, and also a few whites as well, but predominantly red grape varieties grown. So you can see here on the right-hand side, we've got the map here, and you can see the town of SZEKSZARD right up in the north of the map there. And as Zoltan was saying, is the meeting point of the Trans-Danubian Hills and the large Hungarian plain. So on the next slide, we're going to talk a little bit about the history of the region. As I said, it's a historic red wine region. Vines planted since the Roman times. There's been little indications found in the region of going back to that time. And then during the Middle Ages, there were monastic vineyards, Benedictine monks. And the Serbians fleeing the Turks brought the century, the Kadaka grape variety became the flagship variety of SZEKSZARD. Just to say, in the 18th century, Benedictine abbot granted tax breaks to local wine growers, which attracted Germans. And today, families like the Tachlas, the Estebars, and the Heimans can date their ancestry back to the German Swabians. So jumping to 1875 phylloxera, that's a time when a lot of the high-yielding vines were eradicated, and they lost quite a lot of their white grape varieties. And then after that, there was very much a focus on grape varieties like Quecfrancos, Kadaka, and then Cabernet Franc, Cabernet Sauvignon, and Merlot. Remember, obviously, in the 20th century, we had a 40-year setback. And then when they reset the button in 1990, it was Bordeaux varieties that were really more popular at that time, because that's really what the consumer was demanding, quite big styles of red. But now, 30 years later, there's been a fantastic renaissance in this region. And it's really exciting to see grape varieties like Kadaka and Quecfrancos coming to the fore. And that's what we're going to be tasting today. And also, what I've been really impressed with is the Bicava, the raising of the quality of the Bicava cuvées. They're now using their best grapes rather than leftover grapes, and realizing that this cuvée is really unique and very important. And now we have a second generation of winemakers, many of whom you will meet on this seminar, who are very confident. They've traveled, they speak good English, they're very confident in their fruit handling and in their winemaking, and also exploring the different microclimates in their region. So let's have the next slide here. Looking at the climate. So basically continental climate with the Mediterranean influence. So the climate, as Zoltan was saying, is very much influenced by the Great Plains and the SZEKSZARD Hills. In terms of sunshine hours, are about 2040 to 2050 sunshine hours, and excellent conditions for viticulture, with extended sunshine in the autumn, which really aids the ripening. Lovely, hot, long, hot, dry summers. There are figs and olives growing in the town. Mainly southeast facing sites, but we're going to hear a bit more about the different vineyards, and some of them are warmer patches, some of them are cooler patches, but generally they're sort of gentle sloping hills, not particularly high altitude, 150 to 270 meters. I think the highest point is about 270, 280 meters. And we're on the same latitude as Washington State and the North Italian lakes. So on the next slide, we're looking at the soil. Now the soil here, you can see in this picture, is a very pale, sort of buff colored soil. So on the next slide, we'll give you all the details about this soil. So the primary soil of SZEKSZARD is loess, which is a young sedimentary soil. Loess is a name that was actually coined by a 19th century professor, and it means loose. actually about 10% of the world's surface is covered with loess. But there are only specific wine regions where you get this incredible concentration of loess. SZEKSZARD is one of them. Wagram in Austria is another. There's a few patches in Germany, in Rheingau, in Pfalz, in Naha, and Walla Walla in eastern Washington state, and also the Shanxi on the Loess Plateau in China. So it's just to explain to you what loess is. It's this crumbly, loose structured soil made up of sort of wind-blown silt and clay particles. So it's created really by wind, and also it can be created by glaciers, which grind the rock into sort of fine particles. And there's a little bit of lime that also, calcium carbonate, which helps bind this mineral particles together to make it a little bit more like cement. So it forms these amazing stable banks. So wherever you go, for example, in SZEKSZARD, you find these amazing gullies, but you find the same terracing, loess terracing in these other regions I was talking about. But what is so interesting is that all those regions I mentioned, they all have a very similar style of fruit character, in that it's a lovely freshness and this amazing soft tannins that you can get, and this really bright fruit character. So in terms of, I think it's very underrated actually as a soil for viticulture. It retains heat, it's porous, it's permeable, it's got really good, it's ideal for root penetration, and it's full of nutrients, and it's got a high mineral content. And as I said, gives this really lovely sort of freshness and bright fruit character. In SZEKSZARD, you also get pockets of red clay, and we're going to hear more about that when we talk about the different wines and the different vineyards. And that gives a few cooler patches, and also it's very good for good water retention. And it's very prized actually by some of the winemakers. Gorovica vineyard is an example that has clay patches. And so you have and you also have brown forest soils as well. So you have this really interesting soil in SZEKSZARD, which gives the most wonderfully soft textured, soft-textured tannin, soft-textured red wines. So next slide, we are going to have Peter Vida, who is a winery owner. He's going to talk about the single vineyards in SZEKSZARD, because there's, as we were talking about, this is sort of interconnecting series of valleys, and the last kind of, since in the last 20 years, I think there's been a lot more research done as to finding out what the soil types are like and which grape varieties should be grown in these different vineyards. So maybe Peter, you'd like to talk to us about the different vineyards and which you feel are important.
Hello and welcome. Indeed, in order to understand the importance of the single vineyards in SZEKSZARD, you first have to imagine the wine region as itself. If you would see it from above, the wine region, you should think about as a system of valleys that is connected to each other, and each and every valley has its own meso and microclimate, and that really means a lot. So actually we know, and as Rose just taught before, the major soil type is loess, but depending on which valley you are, there are different sizes or amount of red clay or limestone you can find. So we believe, the SZEKSZARD winemakers believe, that the best way to express the unique character of our beloved valleys is through the single vineyard wines. And actually, all our parents' generation did a great job to founding the estates. And now we are privileged and looking forward to the next decades to explore further and show the differences between each single vineyards, and maybe many of them will be shown today as well.
Yeah, so can you just talk us through the one that we can see here, the Yuan Valley? Oh, he's gone away. So can we have the next slide, please? So some more pictures. Oh, hi, Peter.
Peter is back, and
Peter's back. Yeah. So can you just talk a little bit more about what we can see here?
Actually, this is quite a list of the different single vineyards of SZEKSZARD. This is also a nice experiment to trying to spell the Hungarian names of the valleys. So there you can see the most major valleys and vineyards: Görögszó, Porkolab, Idespetre, Bodzás, Szeleshat, Ivánvölgy, Burovica, Baranyavölgy, Faluhely, and Szenta. This is just a few of the many which already being produced single vineyard wines.
And the next picture, next slide, will show us a few more pictures here of the different expositions. So can you talk us through, for example, the Bati vineyard up in the north, the top picture there?
Actually, the Batikarest is a special one in terms of that is on the plateau. So you have like many valleys, as you can see it on the lower pictures, but the Batikarest is a special one because it's on a high altitude, and always the wind moving is better than in the valleys. But the other valleys like have higher temperatures, so maybe better for different terms.
Okay, thank you very much indeed. So we'll see you later when we're talking about your wine. Thank you. So the next slide, that's another vineyard here, the Gorovica, which I actually mentioned and had quite a few clay patches. So just to talk about the grapes that are planted in SZEKSZARD before we start focusing on the Kadarka and the Kek Frankos. So you can see here, reds are very much predominant, 1,900 hectares. So Kek Frankos is the most planted, and it is most planted red grape in Hungary as well, with nearly 8,000 hectares in Hungary. And very acid-driven grape, which adds lovely freshness to the blends. And it became quite widespread after phylloxera. It's a really good yielder, better yielder than Kadarka. And then you can see we've got three Bordeaux varieties. We've got Merlot, which grows very well in the region and makes very attractive single varietals, but also is very useful in blends. Then we have Cabernet Franc, Cabernet Sauvignon. And of the two, I think Cabernet Franc is perhaps the more reliable. It gives lovely freshness to blends as well. And Cabernet Sauvignon, a bit of a late ripener, can be difficult to ripen, but when it's warm, a really good warm vintage, it can be fabulous. So these are used, obviously, they're used for varietals. They're also used in Bordeaux blends, but they're also used in a small proportion in the Bicavard blend, which we will talk about. And some of the cuttings actually came from Bordeaux. So for Kadarka, you can see the figure is really quite small. It used to be so much bigger. But Kadarka is a very sensitive grape, and we'll talk about this. It's a very versatile grape, but it was quite a tricky grape, and it sort of lost favor because the Soviet tractors couldn't cope with it. And so during communist times, it was very much sort of fell out of favor. But I'm so pleased to see, because I've got a bit of a soft spot for Kadarka. I'm so pleased to see more Kadarka now being planted and a real sort of renaissance in this grape variety. Then just quickly to say, we've got Zweigelt, the Austrian Zweigelt. We've got Queco Porto, which is obviously the Blau Portuguese grape variety. There's Pinot Noir. One of the Bicavard cuvées has got a bit of Pinot Noir in there, and one of them's got some Syrah. And they also grow grape varieties like Tannat and Sagrantino, and Malbec. So interesting red grape varieties. And then whites. We're not really going to talk about whites today, but just to show you that they do grow white grape varieties, and as well as these grape varieties here, they also have grapes like Viognier as well. So now we're going to move to the next slide, and we're going to talk about Kadarka. And we've got Zoltan Hyman coming back, who's otherwise known as Kadarka Man. And he's going to talk us through Kadarka and the different clones that they've been developing.
Hello back. Yes, so Kadarka is quite a sweet spot for me as well, Rose. It's nice to hear the same story for you. Although only grown on a little bit more than 80 hectares in our region, I think Kadarka right now at least got to a point where it's not decreasing anymore, and there is definitely some value developed there, I think, in the past 15 years. Part of this added value that we are looking for with Kadarka is the better clonal material. So this is something that we have invested quite a lot. There is new clonal selections planted all over the region and actually all over Hungary as well. The key thing, I think, what you can see on this picture as well, that the right-hand side bunch is quite underripened. And this was a big problem with the old clones selected in the 60s, that they were high yielding, but some of the yield, up to 15–20%, can be still quite green, and you have to ripen it much longer. And since this variety has very thin skins, the berries are very susceptible to especially gray rot, botrytis. So ripening especially is very tricky with Kadarka. And this is, I think, quite thankful for me to say now that some of the old these new clones that we have selected from really old vineyards and propagated on newer parcels, they are probably a bit smaller in berry size, a bit thicker in the berry skin, and definitely more homogeneous in ripening. So my grandfather used to say that Kadarka makes a good red wine only 3 years out of 10. And I think this is not true anymore, although probably our aim has shifted a little bit as well. So this pale red wine, or piros bor, we say in Hungarian, is I think very becoming sexy again, and 12% alcohol is not regarded as a problem anymore. It's also a unique selling point and a big value for Kadarka.
So
And also,
can you just do the next slide there? It'll show us the characteristics. Yeah, it gives us some characteristics while you're talking. Sorry to interrupt you.
It's all right. There was also a question previously about global warming. And I would like to report on that especially Kadarka and Kék Frankos are coping really well with the excessive heat that we are experiencing. So in the past years, there's definitely more warmth that we can see. So flowering, which used to be usually in early June, mid-June, is in past years more and more going into May, even early May. So it often comes even 1 month in advance. Ripening with Kadarka and Kék Frankos, according to the books, these have been varieties ripening in October. Now we are mostly harvesting them during September, sometimes even in August. So there is definitely a shortening of the vegetation period, and these varieties that tended to get ripe most of the years now get ripe every year. So regarding global warming, at least on the short term, there is definitely some positive aspects of it as well. And especially Kadarka can retain its freshness and its low alcohol levels quite well. But we'll get into Kék Frankos and show you some Kék Frankos examples. This retains a good acidity and still quite low pH values. So it's also very good varieties for coping with global warming.
Yeah, and you get different sort of, you've got that lovely sour cherry, raspberry and cranberry and the sort of slightly cooler vintages, and then the lovely sort of black fruit coming through in warmer vintages. It really interesting, great variety. But it really seems to suit the modern times, I think, because it's a lovely, gentle, fresh red. And I'm a huge Pinot Noir lover, and I shouldn't compare the grape, but it sort of, it appeals to me, that lovely lightness. And I do like the lower alcohol potential as well. Somebody's asked a question, what do these changes mean for harvest volume?
Harvest volume are decreasing in past years slightly. So definitely these very dry summers can lead to 10–20% lower volumes in yield. Right now, I can report to you that for me personally, our average volume is 6 tons per hectare. In the wine region, it doesn't really reach 8 tons per hectare. So it's all in all, we are not a very high yielding region. And I think this shows in the aromatic potential of the grapes as well.
Yeah, well, thank you very much indeed for that introduction to Kadarka. And we're going to hear from you again because you've got wine number 3. But we're now going to move with the next slide, hopefully. We're now going to move to our first winery. So hopefully we have the winemaker, Joseph Rappe, who comes from Schreiber Winery, and he will be talking about the winery. Hello.
Hello, it's me, Joseph Rappe. I am a winemaker in Schreiber Winery. Schreiber Wineries belong for the Schreiber family. and I working more than 5 years ago with them. I am responsible for the winemaking and for the sales, and as well a little bit for the vineyards. That's mean I decide which vineyard and which variety can be good in the Baranya Valley, because mostly of our vineyard, 42 hectares is one block in Baranya Valley, and we have 10 hectares in Görög. So what about me? I was studying in Budapest winemaking, and when I finished my graduate, I went to work abroad. I worked 7 countries around the world. I spent 3 years in Italy and a little bit in Austria, New Zealand, South Africa, Chile, and Serbia, and Germany as well. And I was looking for what I really want to drink, which wine is the best. And when I was really love the Riesling, I went to work to Germany. And finally, Germany was a little bit boring country for me. That's why I moved to South Africa. And in South Africa, I really love to drink red wine again. And still, I can improve now, because SZEKSZARD is a red wine region, and why I moved here, because I'm born in SZEKSZARD.
Ah.
That's why it was easy to choose if you love red wines, and this is a red wine region, this is a very good part. And about the winery, our philosophy, at the moment we have 20% white and 80% red varieties. We're making a little bit rosé, and our main variety is Cape Francos. We have more than 12 hectare Cape Francos, different clones, 5 different clones of Cape Francos. And at the moment we have around 2.5, 3 hectare Kadarka, but in this year we will planting another 2. And we will have more than 20 different Kadarka clone, because that variety is very heterogeneous. And I like one clone, is my favorite, is P9. P9 is spicy. And what is our specialty? We have 1.5 hectare Kadarka in very steep vineyard. It's more than 30% steepness. That's really difficult to work there. And even the P9 Kadarka, which one has the lightest color, we have smaller berries, and that smaller berries, of course, the skin as well is a little bit more bigger or thick. And the P9 we have in that wine, what you can tasting, 45%. And what I was waiting for that, it's a light color wine, but maybe this is the first vintage for that vineyard. We just planted in 2019. It's a new project for us. All this block is 14 hectare together, and in that block we have that Kadarka, and it's really different than in another.
Yes, it's interesting because I've got all 3 Kadarkas lined up, and your wine is very much darker than the other 2 wines.
Yes, because the first vineyard vintage for that vineyard.
Right, had a lovely fragrance to it. It dried fruit, I thought, and sort of rich, sort of pruny character. But then when you taste it, it's got those lovely sort of light, sort of sour cherry fruits, and quite sort of low tannins, or like soft and light. No oak. You don't use any oak, do you? And but it's a lovely, robust, sort of juicy fruit character. Very nice. I think it could cope actually with some sort of venison, but I think sort of mushrooms or sort of some sort of game like duck would be very nice with this wine. So thank you very much indeed for your description of the Kadaka and the winery. We're now going to move on to the next wine, number 2.
Just let me
Questions?
just say, yeah, the price of the wine, the shelf price of the wine is €7.50, and the total production is 15,000.
Right, thank you. So after each wine, you're going to do this. You're going to give them the price and the production size.
Yes, if you don't mind. Yes, and
Yes,
I really like the guy moving from Germany to South Africa because Germany is boring. I think that's perfect. I would do the same.
Yes, interesting. All that work on Riesling, and you end up in SZEKSZARD. But we're now going to move to a very different wine, very different Kadaka style. So we've got Judith coming to talk to us. Hello, Judith.
Hi, hello everybody. I'm Judith from Tyskä-Pinsa. This is a small family-owned winery. Can you please go to the next slide? Thank you. The winemaker is my father, Csaba, who will be visible on the next picture. The name itself, it comes from my great-grandfather. We are also of Swabian origin, so we also come, or we are coming from Germany, sort of. His nickname was Tüske, which means spike, thorn, because Iselstecker, it has also, who knows German a little bit, Stechen means sting. And, it was a bit difficult to pronounce it. That's why they called him Tüske. Before the socialist time, they owned a small farm estate with some arable land, some vineyard, and some animals. In the socialist era, the land was appropriated, and unfortunately, he was still alive when we could gather back some of the family-owned territories during this privatization wave of the system change. My father started to farm on 4 hectares in the beginning of the 90s. Since then, the winery grew up to 11 hectares. Our vineyard structure is quite scattered, so we can use the advantages of the different microclimates and terroirs. This wine, what you have in the glasses, comes from Kerékhegy. So we can say it is also a single vineyard wine. As you can see, the color is quite light. We are using many clones for this. For example, 111, 122, 132, and 133 as well. Our vineyards are dominated by the leading varieties of the wine regions like Kadarka, Kékfrankos, Merlot, Cabernet Franc, and Cabernet Sauvignon. From those, we are preparing varietal wines and blends. For example, Schiller, Rosé, and also the Bicavier.
Can you tell us a little bit about the vineyard that it comes from?
What do you mean? Sorry.
You said it was a single vineyard wine. So could you tell us a little bit about the vineyard? Its positioning. Is it southeast facing?
Yes, it's
southeast.
It is a windy slope. If you are coming from Batikerest, then actually to the Heiman winery, somewhere in the middle, you can find this. This is on a windy plateau. It is very good for the Kadarka because it can dry the bunches, so the rot cannot harm so much. Of course, we are also limiting the crop. This is how we can ensure a standard quality during the years.
And you've got how much have you got planted of Kadaka?
It is not much. At the moment, it is a bit more than 0.5 hectares, and we have also planted a little bit more, but on the other side of the valley in Baranyavölgy.
So will you be increasing your plantings of Kadaka, do you think?
We are trying to, but we also have to consider that Kadarka is still a sort of niche market for us. But we are trying to increase because we see the tendency that people are tending more to drink lighter wines than the big alcoholic wines.
Yeah. And this is a lovely wine, 12% alcohol. I think actually it might be quite nice if it's slightly chilled, because it's got a lovely, it's a very light style of Kadarka, but I really liked it. It's got that lovely raspberry sort of red currant fruit and very delicate, lovely soft tannins, but very lively acidity. But it was just so mellow. I really liked it. It's definitely a cool climate wine, you know, when you taste it, but it had a sort of similar sort of Pinot Noir character. So that's maybe why I liked it so much. And it's got some quite nice earthy sort of notes to it. And it's really Moorish, you know, you want to drink more and more of it. I thought it was a really lovely wine and so different actually from the last one and very different from the next wine as well. So it's really interesting to see three very different Kadarkas. Food-wise, what would you pair with it?
We are pairing it with the fish soup, the typical Hungarian fish soup, which is also very light. And for example, ratatouille.
Oh, okay.
These are all very, you know, not so heavy food.
Vegetarian food would be quite good with it, I think, wouldn't it? That sort of light style. Well, thank you very much. Now, how much is it? What's the price and how much is produced?
Usually €8 per bottle, and we are producing 5,000, 6,000 bottles per year.
Right. Small production, but lovely wine. So thank you very much. And then we are moving to wine number 3. So we have Zoltan coming back, Zoltan Hyman, who's going to come and tell us about his Kadarka. He's already talked to us about the grape variety Kadarka, and he talked about the clones. But now he's going to talk about his family winery, and we're going to taste his wine.
Sure. Nice to be back. So on the picture, you can see our winery. We are actually right now sitting in the winery or in the tasting room. So we are a family winery. It was started by my grandfather, and then my parents took over and developed the estate. Especially my father is very much a visionary, I think. We are working on 25 hectares. 3 years ago, we have started the conversion into organic viticulture. So what you can taste now, the Kadarka, this is the second year in the conversion. So 2023 is going to be our first vintage where we can label it organic. So that's going to be a nice big step. And we are located in the northern part of the region, very near to the city of SZEKSZARD. In the Ivan Valley. Actually, Ivan Valley is where some other wineries like Sebestyén and Tüske, Judith in front of me, are coming from. So we are working on with Merlot and Cabernet Franc historically as well. And especially my parents have developed our first national fame with our cuvées. So these are still quite important for us. What we realized though in the past 15 years is that indigenous varieties are gonna become more important and will have to become more important. So therefore we have invested quite a lot in Kadarka and Kék Frankos. Right now Kék Frankos is our first variety with more than 6 hectares in the growing, and we have quadrupled our Kadarka surface in the past 10 years. So now we are growing Kadarka on 4 hectares, a bit more than 4 hectares.
Can you just describe the difference between Hyman and Sons? So, you know, the different labels, because that's something that's important, I think.
Yes, we have the traditional label Hyman, which consists mostly of the cuvées created first by my parents. So it's also my job to create those cuvées right now. We are working together with my parents, and I'm very happy to be able to work together with them. And Hyman and Fiai, this new line of wines, which we have started in 2018 vintage, consists of simple varietal wines coming from Kadarka and Kék Frankos. So it's a very different focus on the indigenous varieties. These wines are, in my view, a little bit simpler in the making. So we use less wood, or not so much less, but only large barrels, and for a short period of time. We don't use any barriques with these wines. And we have invested quite a lot in fermentation technology. So we are using both with Kadarka and Kék Frankos whole bunches in the fermentation. And I think you will notice on the wine as well that it has some stalks in the fermentation and some closed fermenting berries. So we expect more length and a bit more depth from the fermentative aromatics, and therefore adding less during the aging. So I wouldn't like to taste wood on our wines per se.
And you went to Geisenheim, didn't you? And then you worked for one of my favorite producers in the Mosel, Clemens Busch. And then you worked in Tuscany, I think, and you worked in the Yarra Valley in Australia. So were you influenced by any of those places?
No, I became still Hungarian. No. Sure. Yes, I was very lucky that my parents afforded me to go abroad to study, and then I was looking for some traineeship opportunities. So I did work for Clemens Busch, I did work for Caia Rossa in Tuscany, and then my last traineeship was in Yarra Valley at McForbes. So I was looking for estates which are, as it turns out, all of them were organic, but I was looking for kind of interesting tastes and what I can learn with them. It was very obvious during my studies that indigenous varieties are growing of importance and of interest. So just like Kyotso, I became a fan of Riesling, but I don't find it boring still. Maybe it will come. And just like you, Pinot Noir, but also these Italian autochthone varieties from Sicily were very important. We spent our honeymoon in Sicily, tasting frappatos and stuff. And sure,
yeah, frappato is interesting. Yeah,
sure. I think coming home, often these grape varieties were regarded as very simple wines, like everyday wines, which is probably fine. I think so. I think everyday wines can be very layered and interesting as well.
Yeah.
And this is something that we would like to develop in the coming years. So this is the Ivan Völgy where we are located. As you can see, there is a very nice view towards the south and towards the east with the large plain. And some of our Kadarka that you are tasting right now comes from Ivan Völgy and some of the neighboring valleys, Porkolab Völgy, Bödö, and Batikrest. Batikrest you have also seen in the pictures. So these are mostly hilltops and windy places, just like Judith was telling you about. Kadarka really needs quite warm parcels to get ripe. So definitely the more warmer parcels where it's working better, and also the windy parcels, it's very good.
And this is a mix of old and new clones, is that right?
Yes, although we are moving into new clones with big steps. So I do believe that they are more reliable in the production and also a bit more tasty, which I think adds to Kadarka.
So shall we talk about the wines? As I was saying, the three wines lined up. Yours was sort of in the middle in terms of the color. It's just kind of medium bodied, I would have said, but it had a lovely floral fragrance to it, and sour cherry, sort of cranberry fruit, and this lovely delicate soft tannins that you get. And I thought it was really well balanced, actually, but it had a lovely freshness to it. And you obviously got a very sort of light, gentle touch, because it's got, it's just really caresses the palate, and it's just not, you don't want too much grip and you don't want too much structure with Kadarka. It's just a lovely, gentle wine. And I would have said probably would suit the modern cuisine, actually. I don't know what you suggest in terms of food. What do you serve your Kadarka with?
Historically, definitely, I could say that these dishes with paprika or spicy dishes work really well with Kadarka. So our traditional Hungarian cuisine works well. But it's also, since we have started emphasizing this variety, it became a very important export product. So we sell quite a lot to California and New York and Canada.
All right.
And it's nice to get some feedback of that. So it goes pretty well with sushi and with generally seafood, fish dishes. Also, I think the saltiness, the salinity of fish dishes work really well with Kadarka. So it's what you were mentioned previously, ratatouille and vegetarian dishes, so lighter dishes, which are just good for the soul as well, I think, because they elevate you and not make you heavy. So Kadarka works in a similar way, I think.
Yeah, interesting natural wine, somebody has said. So there's sort of low intervention, which I think really comes across, actually. Lovely balance. And it shows the future of this wonderful grape variety that's been kind of forgotten in a way, hasn't it? But luckily, all you winemakers now are sort of reviving it, and I think are doing a really good job. So thank you very much indeed. And maybe we'll see some biodynamic kadakas in the future, will we? I don't know if you're looking at doing biodynamic as well.
At this point, it's a big step for us to go into organic. Still in the region, there is not much organic production, so that it's a tough learning period, I think, and for us and the colleagues as well. But who knows? I'm optimistic for biodynamic, but at this point, organic is.
Well, thank you very much indeed. So we're now going to move on to the next grape variety. So the next. Oh, sorry, the price.
Yeah, the price. Yes, the price. So the price, shelf price, is 1450 euro in Hungary, and the total production is about 16,000 bottles. Right. And the next variety. And
three. So we're now going to talk about Kek Frankos, and we've got Rebecca, hopefully. Hello, Rebecca. So Rebecca comes from the Lever winery, and she's going to talk to us all about Kek Frankos.
Yes, hi, nice to meet everyone. I'm Rebecca, winemaker of Lever. So just a couple of words about Kek Frankos variety before we move on to the Kek Frankos wines. So as we've mentioned it before, it's the major red variety of the Carpathian Basin, and it's the most widely planted red grape in Hungary with 7,800 hectares in total, out of what 700 are located actually in SZEKSZARD. About the variety, the Kek Frankos has moderately dense clusters, medium-sized berries with let's say a thicker skin than the Kadarka, for example. It ripens quite late, but as Soli has mentioned it before, nowadays with the climate change, it's getting more and more early. What about the aromatic characteristics of the variety?
So can we have the next slide, and then I think we've got some details. Yeah, that's good. Thank you.
Okay, yeah, thank you. So regarding the variety itself, I think it's a very reliable variety because it finds, so it feels very good on different styles of terroirs. And in each vintage, even when it's a cooler vintage or a warmer vintage, I think that the Kek Frankos can reach a full ripeness every time. So I consider it very reliable. And I really like working with the Kek Frankos, also because of its pronounced acidity and that the tannin structure is, I would say, it's not so harsh. For me, it's, I know some people don't like to use the word elegant, but for me, it's very elegant, the tannin structure, and it can also fit very well the barrel aging. So I think it's a many-faced variety. Also, we can make very nice rosés with lighter bodied reds, also fuller bodied reds.
And it has very good affinity with oak as well, doesn't it?
Yes, it does, definitely. The only thing is that you have to pay sometimes attention because it can be susceptible to powder mildew, but I think if you do well your things in the vineyard, then it won't be a problem anytime.
And Kek Frankos, the ones that I've been tasting recently, are so much better than they used to be. I think that they were a little bit overcropped perhaps before and a bit picked too early, but now they're much more complex with a lovely depth of fruit and that lovely pepperiness you get, pepperiness and licorice. So we're going to hear from you later when we talk about your Bikava, but we're going to now go to the next wine. We're going to Hetenyi, and we're going to talk about Kek Frankos. So hopefully we will have somebody coming to talk to us. Hello.
Good evening for you all. My name is Emese Hetenyi, and I'm very happy to be here this evening and introduce our winery. In this picture, you can see only our viewpoint cellar, which gives a very nice views on the surrounding hills while you are drinking our Kek Frankos. Because the center of Hetenyi Estate is situated in Mecsek-Nádasd, which is a bit further from SZEKSZARD. And It is surrounded by forests and hills of the Mecek. The winery itself stands on the Pécs wine region. We have 2 small vineyards here, but the most of our vineyards can be found in the SZEKSZARD wine region, Decs Aranydomb and Alsó-Nána, and altogether we have 41 hectares. The Hetényi family established the winery in 1992. That time we had a former partner. We then pulled apart in 2005. And since then, we use the name for the firm Indivinum Ltd, which is a mosaic word from Latin and wants to emphasize that we would like to make individual wines. Since that time, only Hetényi family runs the winery. My father is the winemaker. You can see him in the picture. My mother's main job now is to help us look after the kids, but she was the designer of the house. My husband is now working elsewhere, but he helps us around the house, around the winery and hospitality. My sister, you can see her also in the picture, started to run our father's other business, but helps us in the designing of new labels, for example. And I personally organize the hospitality, the programs, accommodation, and so on. We work with a very wide range of wines, from reductive wines through oxidative wines, rosés, Schillers, and reds. Naturally, as we work also on the SZEKSZARD region, the most of our wines are made of red grapes. Because of the heavy market circumstances and that we are really a family winery with small and to-be-born children, we temporarily shrink our total quantity produced per year. Instead of few sorts and bigger quantity, we make around 18 sorts of wines, but only around 1,500, 2,000 bottles per sort as an average. Around 35% of our wines are sold from the winery itself, the other 60% nationally, and only a few percent now is going to export. We always look for occasions for export, but since now we only sold our 2017 Kék Frankos and 2017 Bikavér in Finland. We presented Kék Frankos from 2018. Kék Frankos is one of our most important sorts. We love this grape and wine sort very much because it is suitable to make fruity, crispy rosés, also good to put in cuvées, and you can make excellent and elegant reds from it, which can be kept in bottle for a while, for years. We always handpick the grapes for the quality Kék Frankos, and we select only the healthy bunches. After delivered to the winery and the berries picked, we put the lot in a steel tank and start the fermentation. We also do the malolactic fermentation on the berries, so the mast is in connection with the berries for 3-4 weeks. After the pressing, the wine goes into the wine cellar, which you could see in the previous picture. We use different size of barrels. We do not use only barrique because we would like to preserve the fruitiness of the wine. Most of our barrels were made from local oak by local coopers. And these unique barrels and our passion for winemaking give the individual taste of our wines. This is our new label, what you can see on our bottle, which we only use for those wines which were selected in the SZEKSZARD bottle. And this year, for the first time, all 3 sorts of our wines, so the Kadar, the Kék Frankos, and the Bikavér was selected to be able to use the SZEKSZARD bottles. So we made a unique label time.
Sorry for interrupting, but tell me, is it true this is only 1,100 bottles?
Yes, actually from this bottling, we only made this amount.
Right. Okay. Thank you.
So
We have Sorry, we have some more cake Frankos, also from 2018, but that will be a different.
2018 was a warm vintage.
2018. Is me on board. It was.
Don't worry.
Great concentration of aromas.
Great concentration of aromas. Yes, I thought it was. There's this dried fruit character coming through again. Sort of cedary notes, which you would expect in terms of the oak that you've been using, and quite a lot of black pepper and that sort of quite powerful acidity that you get from cake Frankos. Interesting wine. And also I noticed that the vines are quite old. They're planted in 1975. So I think that sort of depth of fruit concentration is coming through. Somebody's asked a question as we have 2,000 litre. What size of? So obviously the barrique is 225 litres. That's what you're using, and then you're also using the much larger oak. Is that right?
Yes, our biggest barrels are 5,200 liters, and from the traditional barrique up to 5,200, we have many sizes.
And how long is it in oak?
We always taste the wine. We keep it from 1 year to 2.5 years in barrel. We taste those parts which were kept in barrique and those parts which were kept in traditional oak barrels, and decide the ratio how we mix it.
Okay, and the price of the wine, how much was the wine? We got that.
I think I wrote something around 10.5 euros.
10.5.
10.5 euros.
Yes, and how should I pronounce your first name? It's Emeshe?
Emeshe, yes.
Emeshe, great. Yes, that's easy.
Yeah.
Emeshe.
Yeah.
Hi. Thank you very much.
Very much indeed for showing us your wine. Thank you. So we're going to move on to Peter Vida, who we've met when he talked previously about the single vineyards, and he's going to talk to us now about his family winery and about the wine, the cake Frankos from the single vineyard.
Exactly. So good to be back. Just a few words about ourselves. We are a family winery. We are having 23 hectares in the very best locations. And actually, my father was one of the early pioneers who started to redefining this wine region in the 90s. And as still as now, he's responsible for the most important part of the job. He looks after the vineyards. Actually, we believe that everything comes out of the pipe. 80% it's the vineyard. So all our focus always goes to our wines. Actually, my sister now in charge for making the wines. I'm kind of like Jolly Joker. I do I do everything. And what's really important is that we, from the beginning, our focus goes to the local grape varieties. We believe that these are the best to express our wine region's characters. Actually, which really very good news that as of from March, our wines are being distributed by Vininova. So many Polish cities you can buy the wines. And if I just may ask for the next slide, I will tell a few words about the wine. This is actually the vineyard. So I just told you in the very beginning about the single vineyards. Hidas Petre, the next wine, is going to be a single vineyard wine, and this is where it's coming from. As you can see, it is a closed valley, and as of that, it has a little higher heat. And to play with that, we have the opportunity to harvest cake Frankos from the colder part and also from the warmer side. And what we do is we always pick them separately, and then we decide later by blending how to reach the balance. It's very important for us to have total balance in the wines and to make joyful, elegant wines at all.
I love joyful, elegant wines. That's good.
Yeah.
Lovely label. I love your label.
Thank you very much. It has been recently redesigned in 2019 by a Spanish designer, Xavier Bosch. My homework was from my parents to bring the brand international, and I thought maybe it's a nice help to ask internationally where the guy in designing. But also the most important is always the content. And speaking of the content, the next wine is going to be our brand new vintage for Hides Petra Cake Francois, which is actually one of our most important wine in terms of being an evangelist and telling our story, the SZEKSZARD story to the world. I just thought this is a single vineyard wine, 12-year-old wines, and why it's so special to us, this vintage, that my sister, who's responsible for winemaking, this is her very first vintage. And as of such, she introduced different protocols, such as like using cold soaking for a few days, and then also using whole bunches throughout the fermentations, and also less filtration. So actually, we use Hungarian oaks, always used oaks roughly for a year. I think this vintage was like 15 months in used Hungarian barrels. And then with the minimum filtration, we just bottle the wine and there it goes.
So when you're saying Hungarian oak, where are you getting your oak from?
It's actually two major supplier we have. One is Kadar, Hungary. They are very internationally acknowledged company. I think at least half of their total production goes to abroad, and the other half we can buy in Hungary. And the other company now comes from this region. It's called the Trust Hungary. These two we use. We don't use the traditional 225 liter. We rather stick into the new 300 or 500 liters. Yeah.
Well, I thought this was a really good example of a SZEKSZARD style, actually. Had a deep colour, it had a lovely spicy nose to it, very fresh and aromatic. I thought it was beautifully soft, smooth texture, really elegant, a very, very pretty wine, and just so smooth and soft. But you're still getting that sort of lovely primary fruit character coming through. I think it's a sort of style of wine that might appeal to people who like Syrah, maybe, or maybe Gamay. I thought it was lovely, and I love the deer on the label. I think it's the you said to me once, I think, that when the Danube floods, the deer come into the vineyard. Is that right?
Oh, not just them. They usually comes in, and then we are not so happy when they come in. But there's also little birds on the label, which we more like. These called the merit birds. They're having the nest in the lust walls, so that's why it's really special.
Yeah, so lovely. So well done to your sister, because this is her first vintage. Excellent. So lovely plums and cherries and raspberries and that sort of cocoa and cloves in the background. So a really nice example of Cake Francois. So as it's her first vintage, I look forward to tasting more of her wine. So thank you very much indeed, Peter.
Okay, you're welcome. See you later.
Thank you, Peter. So just yeah, I'm coming here with the price. It's 13.5, and this is 6,800 bottles, right?
Thank you. So now we're going to on the next slide, we're going to hear about Bikava and Chula Sebastian, who I've known for many years because she used to work in Scotland as a sommelier for a top restaurant in Scotland. And she's now obviously working for her family business. And she's going to talk to us about what is special about SZEKSZARD Bikava.
Good evening, everyone. Thank you so much for taking time to discover our region and the wines in the SZEKSZARD bottle. We really appreciate that. And thank you, Rose, for doing this masterclass. Why Bikava? Bikava has 250 years of history in this region. And blending is a traditional method for making wine. So in the old times, people used to have vineyards around the region, and Peter mentioned that we have beautiful valleys. So all these vineyards were around, and they couldn't protect all the vineyards. So some was destroyed by hail or powdery mildew, but they still had some other vineyards where they could pick some healthy grapes from, so they could blend the wines. So that has a long tradition. And as Rose mentioned, we cannot actually forget about the time, which was 40 years of setback for us, and we were not allowed to use the name Bikaware from 1945 till 1990. And then from 1990, we could use again the name of Bikaware. Before, people called the wine Overös or Cuvée. But in our case nowadays, I think in the past 10 years, we have improved much more than in the past 1,000 years. And the quality of the wines has improved a lot as well. And we pay more attention for this local blend. And we have certain rules to make this blend. And on this slide, you can see that we have to use minimum 45% of Cake Francos and minimum 5% of Kadarka for the Bikaware blend. So that means at least 50% of the wine must come from the Carpathian Basin as grape varieties. And most of the wineries are blending these two local grape varieties with the international ones, such as Merlot and the Cabernets. Few of them using a little bit of Syrah or Pinot, but that's in case of 1 or 2 wineries. So most of them, the local one is blended with the international grape varieties. And we have 2 levels for that. We have premium and we have, we could say, standard or entry-level wines. But what makes it very unique, that it is a blend which is not made anywhere else in the world. As you know that we have another wine region called Eger, who is also allowed to make Bikaware blend, but they have different rules. In Eger, Kadarka is not an obligatory variety. They pay more attention for the amount of Cake Francos. But in our case, we believe that in our values, Bikaware is definitely a unique blend, which is not made anywhere else in the world. And it's definitely a wine which can be made, which can give a consistent good quality. As we are blending different grape varieties, it can improve the richness of the flavors. It can give a lot of layers to the wine. Some grape varieties add some fruitiness, the other ones add spiciness. So at the end, you can get a consistent, good quality. And also it is important, you already talked about the Cake Francos and you all tasted the Kadarka. These grape varieties with the global warming has a huge advantage that they can keep their freshness. So these blends, what we are just about to taste, and you will get to taste 6 different Bikaware blends, you will see that how important when you blend them with more complex and fuller bodied grape varieties, that the freshness always comes through the wine. And when you have bottle, we really pay attention when we taste the wines that the wine has to be very fresh and has to have a very good acidity.
Yeah, and you've got the loess soil in SZEKSZARD. They've got very different soil in Eger, haven't they? They've got volcanic soils, so you get much more of a sort of black pepper character, whereas yours is more white pepper, and lovely and soft and elegant, and earlier drinking as well.
Yes, I think they develop faster, and nowadays I think that's also a good advantage.
And more suited to the modern trend.
Yes.
Well, we're going to hear from you later when we talk about your wine. But first of all, we're going to talk about the wine from Bodri. And we've got a representative from Bodri coming. Qatar, hopefully.
From Bodri Winery.
Hello.
Hello. Hello. Hi.
So tell us about Bodri Winery.
Yes, I would like to introduce Bodri Winery. Bodri is the family name of the owner of the winery, István Bodri. His family live and has been involved in viticulture for more 100 years. And the love of grape and viticulture passed through generation in his family. He founded the winery in 1999 in Faluhely, And then he established a real big wine estate with a wine tourism complex, restaurant, rooms for 80 person, and event center. Nowadays, the winery is one of the biggest winery here in SZEKSZARD wine region. The vineyards, own vineyards is 150 hectares. With an integrated 25 hectares, we can select grapes from more than 170 hectares of vineyards. We really believe that the own vineyard is the key of the cost-effective and quality wine production. That's why it's really important for us to work on vineyards. In the vineyards, on one hand, we focus on the traditional varieties like Cape Francos. We have about 50 hectares of Cape Francos, and we really like this variety. We produce a lot of different type of wines from Cape Francos. It is the basic of our rosé, but we have also fruity light Cape Francos, and depending on the vintage, we have very complex full-bodied Cape Francos in the premium category as well. Of course, the base of this Bicavere, which are tasting now, Cape Francos, according to the rules of SZEKSZARD wine region, you have to use at least 45% of Cape Francos if you make Bicavere, but we always use more. 60% of this wine, a little bit more than 60% is Cape Francos, because we really like this variety, and about 10% is Kadarka. It means two-third part of this Bicavere is traditional variety.
We can have the next slide. Sorry, if we can have the, it'll show us the different grape varieties, hopefully.
Yes, but
hopefully we'll get the next slide soon.
Okay.
Great, excellent. Yes, so it shows you the different grape varieties. So we've got in this wine. Sorry.
Thank you. The rest, 30% is international varieties: Cabernet Sauvignon, Merlot, Pinot Noir, Syrah, which give to the wine a nice structures, fine tannins.
Mm. Yours is the only one, I think, in the lineup that's using Pinot Noir and Syrah.
Yes, because Pinot Noir is similar like Kadarka. That's why we used Pinot Noir. We haven't got a lot of Kadarka. We have only 2 hectares of Kadarka. That's why we used Pinot Noir as well. And a very small quantity of Syrah because of spiciness, and we had a good barrels. Of course, it always depends on the vintage. Before blending, we make some tests, and then we choose the best blend. And from 2020, it was the best blend which we choose.
Yeah.
Fermentation is always in stainless steel tanks under control. And then the variety is aged in 500-liter oak barrels for 12 months, always Hungarian oak. And then we make blending. We think that this blend, the Bicavere should express, involve, and probably harmonize the unique characters of varieties which we work with here in SZEKSZARD.
Mm. And actually, this is not in a SZEKSZARD bottle, is it? Because you had problems, I think, getting the glass.
Yes. There was a lot of problem last year to purchase bottle. And in summer, when we bottled the wine, we couldn't get SZEKSZARD bottles. The production started in September, and we had the wine in July.
Mm.
And we ordered the bottle in May, but we couldn't get it in summer. That was the problem. Yeah. And I think it will be a problem also this year, but I think there is a lot of problem with butters, not only with SZEKSZARD butter.
Yes, very much so. Yes. So it had a lovely, I thought it had a lovely appealing softness and complexity, this wine, layers of flavors and a real sort of plummy depth to it, and really good length and a lovely sort of velvety, smooth character. I think that it was a really attractive wine, actually, a really attractive example of Bicova. What was interesting was I was looking at your website and I noticed actually that there are 3 generations working. Is that right? 3 generations of the family working in the winery?
Yes, it's true because
an awful lot of children.
Yes, a lot of children, now 7.
Do you have triplets and twins?
Yes. Orsi Bodri, the daughter of István, has triplet. Yes.
Wow.
Yes.
Right. So lots of little ones for the new generation.
Yes, of course, and they love to work in the winery during.
Well, thank you very much indeed. Can we just hear about the price and how much is produced?
Yes, it is our basic level because where the shelf price is between 5 and 7 euro, included VAT in Hungary. We produce 30,000 bottles per year, but we are able to produce 200,000 bottles because we have 5 hectares Frankos. And the whole production of the company is 800,000 bottles, but we are able to produce, our capacity is 1.5 million. We sell some grapes and also bulk wine now.
Right. Okay. Well, thank you very much indeed. Lovely to hear from you. And we're now going to hear from Rebecca again. We're going to meet Rebecca, who was talking about Frankos earlier. She's going to talk to us about her winery, which has got a lot of terraces.
Yes, I'm back again. Thank you for having me again. So I'm Rebecca, as I've said it before, from Lajvér Winery. Lajvér Winery is located about 10 kilometers from SZEKSZARD on the south. It was founded in 2011. That's also when the vineyard was planted. Basically, it was an investment because the owners, they are coming from the construction field. So they decided to build a winery. Actually, that's why the design of the whole winery building, it's very super modern. Let's say some of my winemaker colleagues here, they call it just a spaceship. It really fit in the landscape in order to use as much as possible the natural temperature controlling of the soil. The vineyard is also planted around the winery in a form of a fan. Actually, it's a single vineyard of 26.4 hectares. And we have 12 varieties here. And all the different varieties are located on different terraces. It's very good actually for us because all the varieties can feel good on their own terrace because there is always a temperature difference between the lowest and the highest terraces of 45 degrees Celsius, which is quite a lot. Yeah, and where is all of this located? It's in a small valley of the Lajvér Creek. That's where the name comes of the winery, the Lajvér. And here we have actually a special microclimate because it's a cooler area because of the valley location. And in some vintages, it can be beneficial, but in some vintages, it can also be a curse for us. For example, in 2022, which was a super hot vintage, it was kind of beneficial for us because we had cooler days, so the grapes were ripening very well, actually. Yeah, so about us a little bit. On the previous slide, you have seen 3 people, including me. So actually, we're a small team working together. I would say we are very passionate professionals because none of us is related to the owners, actually. And we believe in joint decision making also. So it means that as I get involved in the viticulture part, also the viticulturalist gets involved in the winemaking. For example, we taste together, which is, I think, good because the decision and like the tasting, I like to share it with other people and make the decisions together. Yeah, so going to the next slide. As you can see, so these are just some pictures, so you can have an idea of this spaceship construction. Also, the winery is built on several levels, so we have 5 levels in total. The barrel room is located 30 meters deep down in the soil, so there is also a regulated temperature there. Our yearly production is 380,000 bottles per year, of which out of which 65% is actually rosé and red. The rest is white, because I forgot to say that the 12 varieties that we have, of them 5 are white and 7 are red. We also focus a lot on Kadarka and Kék Frankos because we believe that it is very important to put an attention on the local varieties, and we also really like to work with these varieties. So for this wine tasting, I have chosen a Bicaver because we believe that the different varieties, they can be beautiful as they are in single variety wines, but in order to bring out the most, we like to make blends. And that's why I chose this Bicaver, because I think that varieties, they can compensate each other very well, and they can form a more complex entity together. So this is a Bicaver from 2019. Actually, it was my first vintage in Lager, 2019.
Can I just ask you, because you've got quite a bit of Cabernet Franc in this blend, and I noticed that a previous vintage, 2017, only had 15% Cabernet Franc, whereas you've got 35%.
Yeah, we decided to put more Cabernet Franc on one side because we have, so our biggest vineyard part is from Cabernet Franc. We have around 4 hectares of Cabernet Franc.
Mm-hmm.
And also, we really like to put it in blends because we think that it gives it has usually our Cabernet Francs, they have a higher pH, and so they can give a very nice roundness and like a warm mouth feel to the Bicaver blend. That's why we choose to go higher up with the percentage.
Yeah. And you're using Hungarian oak. You're not using, I know you use American oak with some of your wines, but you're only using Hungarian for this wine.
No, we have been using American oak, but it was in the early years of Lager, so now we changed completely. We have some French oak barrels, but it's 95% of Hungarian oak. And also before we used a lot of 225-liter oak barrels, but now we changed, and we want to use 500-liter oak barrels because we don't want the oak to over-dominate the fruitiness of the wines. That's why we also only keep the wines in barrels for 12 months maximum, and then the next vintage comes in. And for example, here in this Bicaver, we decided to use second and third barrel. I don't know what this noise is.
The noise is the sound is not good.
Yeah,
I can hear.
I don't think it's from us. So
okay, so this is us perhaps.
yeah.
Just about the price, if I can add something, this is €6.90.
Yeah, on
right?
the shelf. Yes,
on the shelf, right? And 15,000 bottles.
Yes, because yes, so we are able to go up to 15,000 bottles because we have a lot of wine to do that. But for example, from this 2019, we only have like 2,000 left, I guess. I'm not sure. Didn't check it.
Lovely wine. That was very good, actually. Rich, deep fruit, cedary, black cherries, forest floor, sort of a bit of chocolate there, and had a lovely, rich intensity. But I like the freshness, which I think is probably coming from Cabernet Franc. So, you know, it's neither sort of soft nor strong. It's got a lovely elegance to it and a nice, lush sort of fruit character. So well done. Really nice wine. So thank you very much indeed.
Thank you.
Rebecca, you don't have any distributor in Poland, right?
As far as I know, we don't.
Not yet.
Lovely wine, great balance and fruitness. Very nice wine indeed.
Thank
Yeah,
you.
well, there you are. They agree with me.
Well, yeah, they do. They're from Warsaw and Łódź, so completely different, different tasters, different tastes.
Yeah, yeah.
Okay.
Interesting.
Thank you.
Thank
Thank
you.
you.
Now we've got Chilla back, and she's going to talk about her family winery.
Yes,
Hi.
I think we are kind of the youngest one. I would say it's first generation winemaking history. What we have about 20 years of
Yeah.
history. Actually, my brother is the very first one in our family who became winemaker. And my father used to make wine, but that was more like a hobby. In this region, that's very common that people have a small garden, a weekend house, and our father used to make wine. It was more a hobby. And my brother got the inspiration and actually influenced the whole family at the end in 2003 when we established the winery. So since then, our father is responsible for the working in the vineyards and the logistic. Our mother is doing all the paperwork, administration, so the heavy part. My brother, as I said, he's a winemaker, he's the boss. And myself, I joined in 2014. And my role is mainly of the blending of the wines. So we do that together with my brother and my father. Also the export. At the moment, we have 17 hectares of vineyards, but 4 hectares is quite a new vineyard. We just planted out of these 4 hectares, 2 hectares this year, and we try to convert into organic farming in that vineyard, which is in Görögszó. So from 15 hectares of vineyards, we produce about 80,000 bottles of wine every year. 35% is sold in different countries, mainly to the UK and the US. And we have one main distributor in Hungary. Our wines mostly sold to restaurants and to wine bars and wine shops. We really focus on local grapes and the Bicaver blend. So while I was studying in abroad and I was working in Scotland, we've been talking a lot with my brother what we actually want to do, how we want to maintain our tradition in this region, what we would like to be known for. And we have decided, it didn't take us too long. I was very confident to push him towards to the local grape varieties and the local blend, because we really wanted to show our wines internationally as well. And we realized that local wines are able to shine. And actually now these wines can be in trends and they are very interesting internationally as well. So he was the very first winemaker in this region who made in 2007 the very first single vineyard Bicaver blend as well. And now the wine what we are tasting, it's called Mosaic, which is our estate wine. And I could say this could be the most important wine in our case, because this is a blend you can see from different vineyards from all around the region. It has grapes from Ivan Valley, from Porcolab, from Görögszó. These 3 are actually the vineyards where we make single vineyard Bicaver blends as well. So it really reflects the region itself, as it's based on Cake Francos. There is Merlot and Cabernet in it, and a little bit of Cadarca as well. So you can see all the grape varieties, what is planted around the region. And it definitely has the style what we like with my brother. We like fruit-driven wines, which has good acidity, well-balanced, not too heavy. We like to drink wine, by the way. So we like to drink 1 or 2 glasses without food every day. And I think Bicaver is really a type of blend which is quite easy to approach, easy to understand, but it can give you a lot. And we named the wine Mosaic. It's a Hungarian name, but everyone understands what mosaic means. So when we do our job right and we do the blending properly, and not like in the old days when they just put everything together and they named it Bicaver, we wanted to use a name for our estate wine, which really represents what blending means in the case of Bicavere. So I would not say it's an art, but it's something which is related to art, because we really have to find the balance in between the grape varieties. When you taste a good Bicavere, it cannot be overpowered by any of the grape varieties. So people cannot say this tastes like Cape Francoche, this tastes like Cabernet. It should taste good. And if we do our job right, get the picture and everything together. So you get the what makes the picture. Sorry about the noise. I don't know. It's not
I
from
don't
us.
know what it is. No, but this is a really, really elegant style of Bicavere. It's got a sort of savouriness to it, but it's really fresh and quite a light style, but really attractive. And that sort of sour red cherries, red currants, and that sort of juicy acidity that you get with that sort of Kadaka note to it. And although, of course, I'm not meant to say that. And then that sort of lovely soft tan is really approachable, velvety texture. I thought it was really nice wine. What would you serve food-wise with it?
I really like to have duck with it. It's one
Okay.
of my favorite dishes, duck, confit duck.
Mm.
And I think also some deer, if it's not that heavy, or you have something to complement, like maybe a soury garnish or sauce with it. A deer can be very good as well, and any type of pork dish. Or if you have something which is fatty, so the acidity cuts through the fatty.
So some notes there. It says not over oaked. I presume that they're talking about this wine. Just perfect. Yeah, because you're using really quite large oak, aren't you? I mean, there's a sort of hug of oak there, but it's not dominant. And I that's what I really like about it. I think it's very approachable. And I know the wine because you sell it in the UK and at a really good price. So well done.
Thank you.
Well, so some comments in the chat. Lovely, fantastic wine, not over oaked, just perfect, and very nice wine from Krakow, Warsaw, and Katowice. You know, you
So well
conquered
done. Thank you.
the whole country. Right, the price of this wine. The price is 10.5, and this is 9,000 bottles. 9,000 bottles, and the next wine.
So we're now moving to Estebar, so one of the Swabian families. Hello.
Hello, good evening. Nice to meet you. My name is Sheila Orato from Estebar Winery. I work there as a sales and marketing manager. Estebar Winery is a middle-sized winery in SZEKSZARD. It's a family-owned business. The head of us is János Eszterbauer and runs the tradition-based business with his wife, daughters, and our winemakers, Miklós Kelány. The history of the grape growing within the Eszterbauer family tracked back to 1746. But when was the communism in Hungary, the lands take it off. So the new generation is 2011. The winery have a three part. You see in a picture the gray and the white building. This is our new factory. It's 2019. But in the earlier years, built a guest house and a pretty lovely cellar and an hour evening hall. We cultivated 37 hectares in the most famous valleys in SZEKSZARD, Görögszó, Bodzás Valley, Palanki Hill, and Alsónána. Our mostly product is red wines in 90%, the other 10% is wines and rosé. We usually produce 300,000 bottles per year. And our flagship wines is Cape Francoche, Kadarka, and Bicavere. And I would like to show our Bicavere to you. The name is Tüke. It means local patriot with a folk words. The vintage is 2020. The vineyard's 30 years old. The vineyard is Görög Szó and Bodzás. This wine was late harvested in October, sorted and harvesting by hand. And after the malolactic fermentation, we put 1 year in old barrels, French and Hungarian oak, and 500 liters and 225 liters barrels. So it's 48% Cape Francos, 18% Cabernet Sauvignon, 15% Cabernet Franc, 14% Merlot, and 5% Kadarka. I think the taste balance with ripe forest fruits, barrel spices, and velvety tannins. This is my opinions. I don't know, what do you think?
I thought it had a lovely sort of floral fragrance. It's a very perfumed wine, actually, and that lovely sort of smooth, soft, lush sort of texture to it. It had quite sort of prominent sort of juicy acidity. And the Francos I thought was relatively prominent, but not sort of taking over. But a very nice example, actually, nice is an awful word, a good example of a modern, well-made Bikava. So what food-wise would you serve it with?
For me, I prefer the pork and the beef. But
so spicy sausages.
Yeah.
Sort of barbecue food, maybe, because it's got a sort of spicy character to it as well, hasn't it?
Yes.
Very nice. Thank you very much indeed. Somebody's put nice influence of Cabernet Franc on this wine. I'm not sure. I think it's referring to this wine rather than the last one. But...
Yeah, this is this wine, I believe, regarding the timing, because
Cabernet Franc giving a nice freshness to the wine. So thank you very much indeed. And another really interesting winery to visit. Such a beautiful region, SZEKSZARD, and there's lots of very interesting places to visit in terms of, you don't stay there, and lots of things to do apart from just wine tasting as well. Hiking, biking, walking up and
running.
And so now we've got another winery, and this one we've got Chilla to help with the translation. So the owner of the winery is Janos, I think. Hi.
Oh, hello.
Hello. And you're going to tell us about your Bikava.
Yes, I will introduce Janos, and then he will talk about the wine, and I will also translate that. Janos Marquardt Jr., I would describe him as one of the most charming, and I would not use the word, well, not cute, but very charming winemaker. Definitely is one of the most loved winemaker in this region, and I think around the country as well. He does not understand that, otherwise he would be very shy to say no, it's not true, but it's very true. He has, you can see, 3 beautiful kids, and he is a very hard-working winemaker who spends most of his time outside of the vineyards. He works on 5 hectares of vineyards and trying to convert his vineyards into an organic farming as well. He has one of the oldest Kadarka vineyards, which were planted in 1935, and they grow on bush wines. He really pays attention of a good Kadarka wine, Cape Francos and Bikaver. So he has decided in the last few years that he won't grow any grapes to make rosé wine, for example, which is very exceptional in this region. And he does not want to make a single varietal of Cabernet, for example, or Syrah wine, which he used to make. So he really wants to focus on these 3 wines, and Bikaver comes first. So out of the 18,000 bottles of wine, what he's producing every year, the Bikaver amount is growing every year. As I mentioned, it's a family-owned business, so it's himself and his wife who does all the administrative work, paperwork, and also works in the vineyard. And he has only one person to help, who works mainly in the vineyard. He actually has inherited some of his vineyards because his grandfather, which you would never ever think that he is 94 years old. I remember 3 years ago, he has planted vineyards. And he was, yeah, this year he was still driving his tractor and going in the vineyards during harvest time. So you would think he's about like 80 years old winemaker. So they used to work together, and he has learned a lot from him, especially how to work in the vineyards. But now János is running his own family business. And would you like to introduce the wine? Bemutatod a bort?
Igen, hát itt ez a bikavér, ugye nálam a bikavér képzi a boroknak a csúcsát.
So this bikavér blend represents the top wines of his whole
ízlésemet
selection.
is ez képviseli
And it
legjobban.
represents very well his style.
Nálam maximum 10%-ba szokott eltérni évjáratonként a házasítás.
So his percentage in the blending is usually this 50% of Cape Francos, 30 Sauvignon, 10 Cadarca, and 10 Syrah. It's about 10% differentiation in between the vintages.
A Cape Francos, Cabernet és Cadarca az ugyanarról a területről van.
The Cape Francos and the Cabernet and the Cadarca grapes are coming from the same vineyard.
És a Syrah helyett valamikor Merlot van, volt, amikor Zweigelt volt.
And instead of the Syrah, sometimes he's using Merlot or Zweigelt grape variety. But the first three are always in the blend.
A fajtákat külön szüreteljük.
All the grape varieties are hand harvested and harvested separately.
Van tartályos erjesztés is, meg nyitott kádas is.
Some of them are fermented in stainless steel tanks, and some of them are fermented in open vats.
Ebben az évjáratban decemberben volt házasítva a készbor.
In this particular vintage, he has done the blending end of the year in December, so the wines were aged separately, we could say, for 3 months, and then he blended the wines. He made the bikavér blend.
Körülbelül egy évet ért 10 hektós ászokoldóban.
And after that, he has aged the wines together for 12 months in 10 hectoliter of oak barrels.
Utána még 2 évig palacba.
Then the wine was aged in a bottle for 2 years.
És hát egy fél éve van ez forgalomban.
And he has released the wine 6 months ago. So he really pays attention. He wants to age the bikavér wine for 3 years before he releases the wine. And he believes that the Cadarca and the Cape Francos are the wines which he could sell when they are younger.
Right. Yeah. Can I just ask him about the 2018 vintage?
Inkább a
Igen,
az, hogy én úgy érzem, hogy eleinte inkább a gyümölcsök domináltak ebbe az évbe.
He feels that at the beginning, while he was aging the wine, he could feel more the fruit in the wine.
Tulajdonképpen nem a vastag évjáratok közé tartozik,
It's not a vintage which gives a very heavy, powerful wines. It's more about fruits.
De hosszú távon egy jó struktúra.
But it has a good structure it has a potential for aging.
Deep color. I thought it was quite meaty and savory and quite rich. And a good depth of plummy fruit character, and soft textured, and a very good balance to it. And I really felt that I was really, was tasting a handcrafted wine that spent a bit of time in bottle. I thought it was, nicely integrated. So well done, and thank you very much indeed for joining the seminar. Love this one. What price do we have? What is the price of the wine?
Sorry, 7.5, and this is 4,000 bottles.
Right, small quantity, but and not expensive wine. I mean that's an interesting wine, interesting label as well.
Yeah.
So we're now going to move to a very well-known winery, the Takla Winery. Very nice place to stay if you like keep comfort, nice spa, and in a very beautiful position. It's about sort of 8 kilometers out of SZEKSZARD, isn't it? So Andras, welcome.
Thank you. Good evening, all of you. Yes, we are 10 kilometers far from SZEKSZARD town. It comes from our history because in 1978, our old house was taken away. That time, you know, during the communism. So my grandparents had to find a new place to continue this very nice job because me and my brother, we are the 9th generation. Our first relative, Dr. Josephus, was sent to this area in 1767. So my family winery was established by our father, Ferenc Takler, in 1996, and 1995 vintage was the first released in the Hungarian wine markets. Since that time, we continuously increasing the majorities, investing to the technologies, and now we are farming on 82 hectares. 9 very good sites of SZEKSZARD. One part much closer to Baltasik, and the other part close to the SZEKSZARD town. Our main varieties are the Cape Francos, the Merlot, Cabernet Franc, Kadarka, and the last few years we planted some white grapes because of our hotel, and because of that fact we have a pretty wine bar in Budapest, so we need some nice white wines beside the complex reds. You can see the cellar and the sanctuary of the wine, which is a very preferred place when someone visiting our wine estate. And we have 36 double rooms in our hotel with a nice restaurant and conference room. So we invested a lot of money to the hosting and the hotel. Our winemaker is my brother, who produced this 18 heritage Bikavér. 1.5 years ago, we totally renewed our design, and we renamed our Bikavér and our SZEKSZARD bottled wines to heritage as a family, a brand name of these 3 type of wines. We prefer using modern technology in terms of the fermentation, very harmful fermentation and bunching down methods we are using. We're trying to focus on the primary notes of the varieties, the spiciness, the nice vivid character. 18 was a nice year, but we had to harvest in time, otherwise the alcohol and the tannins might be quite rough. But the alcohol is 14, which is perhaps moderated, not very high. It contains 6 wines. The base is the Cape Francos, 52%, 20 Merlot, 13 Cabernet Franc, 7 Cabernet Sauvignon, 5 Kadarka, and 4 Shiraz, which provides some more spiciness to this blend. I think it's a modern style, complex, nice balanced wine with a typical character of our region. We are proud of this wine because it was awarded as the wine of the Hungarian Parliament this year, the Bikavér wine of the Hungarian Parliament this year, and it was rated 93 points by James Suckling.
Well, Andres, I had all the Bikavers lined up and I tasted them all blind to begin with, and yours actually scored the highest. And I really liked it because I thought that I had wonderful balance and complexity, really good layers of flavor, but it had a really nice grip and structure to it. Just a really good combination of, you've got lots of fruit there, it's sort of juicy acidity, but you've also got a bit of grip and structure. So really nice wine. So well done to your brother who made the wine.
Thank you. The Italian.
What I was interested in is because you've got a mix of different soils. You've got a mix of the loess soils and also the red clay. So what are they bringing to the wine?
Basically, most of the terroirs contains loess, but the nicest terroirs contains the red clay and the gray clay and a higher rate of the limestone. So these parcels could provide more layers in the wine, more complexity, a long age, much longer aging potential. So most of the wineries focusing on these much more clay terroirs to produce the biggest wines.
So somebody was saying that some of the percentages that you were saying was sort of very slightly different to what I said, but the comment so far is my favorite so far. Somebody agrees with me, and then Syrah's 6%, but comes through very much and it's great wine.
Thank you so much.
And actually, price-wise, I mean, I know this wine because it's in the UK, and it's only £10.50 in the UK. I mean, it's not expensive wine, and it's a really well-made, complex wine. So, well done.
£10 in the UK.
£10.
So
and how much have you got it?
€10.
Yes.
Yes, you should immigrate. Wow, it's much cheaper here.
Yes, it's good.
And this is 25,000 bottles. Think about.
Yes. Anyway, we almost ran out of this vintage. We are preparing the new label for the next edition from 2019. That I think could be even better because of
I look forward to tasting it.
Perhaps a bit a higher price because it's. I think we need to increase slightly the price.
I shouldn't have said that. Oh no, it's very nice. So well done. And also, as I was saying, a very, very nice place to visit. You know, you go get married there, go and stay there, lovely spa. So really lovely place. So thank you very much indeed.
Thank you so much.
The family.
Another comment is beautiful balance between
freshness and and barrel, I think it's
and barrel.
Yes. Okay, so last but not least, we have Christina. I hope, from SZEKSZARD.
To have and to have not.
Yes, there we are.
Hi everyone.
Hello.
Dobry wieczór. Thanks for tasting our wines. My name is Christina and I'm coming from the SZEKSZARD winery. SZEKSZARD is a family-owned winery. We have 55 hectares and the owners of the winery are not local people of SZEKSZARD, but they came approximately 80 kilometers from this wine region. But when they traveled there and noticed the beauty of this landscape, they decided to buy a parcel there. The first parcel what they have bought is the very northern part of the SZEKSZARD. Here you can see the map of the SZEKSZARD. So there they established a wine growing business in 2000. That was the year when they founded the first vineyard in SZEKSZARD, and they started to sell their grapes. But a few years passed by and they decided that maybe it would be a good idea or a wise idea to improve this business and try to make their own wines. So So our first vintage was 2006, and since then we are producing wine. Then the final size of the estate now is 55 hectares. As you could see on the previous sheet, yes, here, thank you. It's situated in one vineyard. So all our wines are basically single vineyard wines, which is quite unique in Hungary, and which also makes our work a lot easier, because at the very bottom of the photo you can see the winery where it's situated. So it's very easy to work here, because after harvesting we receive our grapes very quickly, and we can start to make wine quite quick. So as you can see on the map, our two main varieties are Cape Francos and Merlot. The pink ones are the Cape Francos, and the browns are the Merlot blocks. We really like these two varieties. We like to make wines separately from them, and we really like to make cuvées. And most of our production is blending Cape Francos with the Bordeaux varieties. Our winery is quite a new one. It was built between 2013 and 2020. And we make our wines in quite a traditional way. We ferment all our red wines in stainless steel tanks, and then we age them mostly for a year in barrels. And then after bottling, we also age them for another year in bottle before starting to sell them. We think that bottle aging is very important, and we like it a lot. So if we can make it, we prefer to age our wines in bottles. And in the case of this Bicaver, you can see these two beautiful French oak barrels, which are quite big. Its size is 40 hectoliters big, and we aged the Bicaver here in these two big barrels for a year after blending, and then we bottle them, and of course in bottle also we age them. So I joined the crew of the SZEKSZARD 6 years ago as a winemaker, and since then I work there. I really like the uniqueness of our vineyard that is situated in one single valley. I liked our soil, which is basically a loess with some red clay layers. And I really like the technique, what we do in the winery. I prefer giving wines some time to age and make them. So time really makes the wines round and balanced. So our Bicaver is based on Cape Francos, and the next main variety is Cabernet Franc. It's 30% of Cabernet Franc, 10% Merlot, and 10% Cabernet Sauvignon, and 5% Kadarka. We really like Cabernet Franc in this region. We prefer its peppery smell, and we think that it suits very well the fruitness and the vivid acidity of Cape Francos. So this is the blend of this Bicaver, and this was the first Bicaver of our estate, and we are quite proud of it, because this was the first wine that won us an international wine award, and also it was the first wine that brought us to the UK market. So we like Bicaver a lot.
Yeah. So how much of all the wines you produce, what proportion is Bicaver?
It's 150,000 bottles a year.
Right.
And the Bicaver is 10,000 bottles each year.
Mm.
We have two of these 40 hectoliters barrels.
So I had this wine in a tasting last year. I had a range of Hungarian wines, and I did 2 tastings in 2 different cities. And both tastings, this was the most popular wine. It was very interesting. And they just loved it. Even though actually it was a really hot day when we were having the tastings, it was in the middle of summer, but they just loved this wine. It's just, they loved the sort of savory sort of spiciness of it. Soft, silky textures and that lovely, lush, ripe fruit that you have. Now, somebody's asked, what fruit pairing would you propose?
I think with almost every meat, it will work great. And also because of its spiciness, what you said, what you've mentioned, I think it suits quite well with Asian food, maybe.
Mm-hmm.
And also, I know that in Polish cuisine, they use quite a lot of cabbage, and I can even imagine with some sides of cabbage as well.
Yeah, very mellow wine. 2017 vintage. Can you just tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah, it was a beautiful vintage. Actually, we could feel it during the whole season that the wines that we will make gonna be really extraordinary. They were very rich in tannin after harvest. It was hard to believe that those tannins will soften by time, but they did. And these wines, they really last long. Now, for example, is I think the perfect time for our wines from 2017 to be consumed. And I think they will last long. This nice acidity and nice ripeness, I think it gives our wines from 2017 quite a long life.
Yeah, well done, because it's yet another different style of Bikova. So thank you very much indeed. And price-wise, have we done the price and the?
Yeah, it's €12 on a shelf in Hungary.
Okay, lovely. Thank you very much indeed, and thank you for joining the seminar.
Whoa, yeah. So this is the end, right? So just if you missed something, prices and the number of bottles here, it was a very tasty and interesting evening. Thank you much, Rose. And Bill. Yeah.
Oh, that's lovely. We've got all that's wonderful. The SZEKSZARD wine growers. Thank you very much indeed. And thank you so much for joining the tasting. I hope you enjoyed it. And I've been so impressed with this region, the way that it's developed. And the way I really like the way that they're focusing on their local grape varieties. And the Bikova has improved so much from when I first tasted Bikova. So well done to all of you. And also, I'm so impressed with your English. It's much better than my Hungarian.
That was a high bar to ask.
So thank you very much indeed for everyone for joining.
Thank you everyone. And
bye.
See you soon, hopefully. Bye-bye. Ciao. Thank you very much. Have a good evening.
Élvezzük egy kicsit.
Igen, jó lett volna látni az embereket, nem? Akik kóstolták.